Another factor in having a great experience with golf and diabetes is accounting for the time of day. The time of day can really impact your glucose levels. Now, generally speaking, the morning time, sometimes something called the morning dawn effect can happen. What the morning dawn effect is a rise in glucose levels that's exacerbated by exercise. A lot of times people will tee off at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning and they're worried about going low. When in a lot of cases, it's actually the exact opposite. The concern is going too high and not taking enough insulin with your breakfast to account for that morning dawn effect. Then there's the mid-morning, 11 a.m., 12, 1 p.m. This is definitely the time to be aware of hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, when you get into the chasing insulin effect, okay? And golf can exacerbate that. So, what happens with chasing insulin is you have insulin in your system and there's no matching food or glucose there. What happens, you're out there playing golf, you're either walking or riding, your number starts to drop, and next thing you know, you've made a double bogey, okay? Be aware of the time of day. Then there's afternoon. Now, afternoon, your personal experience is going to dictate your strategy, but if your blood sugar is going high in the afternoon, make sure you're accounting for both breakfast and lunch. A lot of times, people will eat low glycemic food for breakfast, like oatmeal, not realizing that oatmeal, even though it's low glycemic, has a large glycemic load and actually has a ton of sugar in it. I've seen a lot of cases where people have great blood sugar in the morning, then they get out on the course 3 or 4 o'clock and their blood sugar is 300 and they wonder what happened. Make sure you're accounting for breakfast. All right, let's tee off. Another fundamental rule when you're playing golf with diabetes is you should always have your testing equipment on you at all times. Don't leave it in the cart, don't leave it in the locker, don't leave it in the car. You should always have your test meter, and if you're taking insulin therapy, you should always have your insulin with you no matter what. Okay, so we're here on the 4th hole. I'm 1 over after 3, not too bad. After this hole, I'm going to test my blood sugar. Remember, very important to stick to the schedule with testing blood sugar. That's how you avoid low or high blood sugar on the golf course. So we just finished the 4th hole. I'm going to test my blood sugar now because that's the schedule. Remember, test before the 1st, after the 4th, after the 9th, and then the 13th. And really the primary reason for this is having a schedule that you can really trust. Okay, so my number is 182. So I went up from 138 to 182. Now, let's talk about this. Most people with type 1 diabetes, when they're on the golf course, experience crashing glucose levels. That's their primary problem. The way to avoid that is to understand what golf is. Golf is a long duration, low intensity sport. That means your body has to metabolize fat in order to perform the activity. You have to understand the relationship between insulin and fat metabolism. Insulin prevents the metabolism of fat from happening. So, unfortunately, what most people do is, instead of lowering the presence of insulin, which is what I did before we teed off, they think I need to consume more carbs. That's the exact opposite approach. It's all about matching the presence of insulin to the heart rate of the activity that you are performing. In golf, long duration, low heart rate zone, that means you have to have a low presence of insulin. Try that next time. Let's just talk a little bit more about what I was just saying. Golf is a long duration, low intensity sport. I've had a lot of clients who have basically said the following scenario happens to them. They get on the golf course and they can't eat enough. They're drinking Gatorade after Gatorade, they're eating Snickers bars, and they're just having low blood sugar, which is a terrible experience and very frustrating. What they're not doing is they are not adjusting their insulin properly and recognizing that golf, because it's low intensity, low heart rate zone, requires a very low amount of insulin. And the way that you eliminate fluctuations in glucose levels on the golf course, and specifically prevent low blood sugar on the golf course, is by reducing the presence of insulin and not eating too much before you tee off. Now in my case, I just went from 138 to 182. I reduced the presence of insulin, but I probably ate a little bit too much. Now, going from 138 to 182 is a lot better and more enjoyable experience than going from 250 down to 85, which unfortunately is what happens to a lot of people who have diabetes when they're playing golf. So try that trick. Instead of eating too much or eating a lot or eating lots of candy and carbs on or before the golf round, try reducing the presence of insulin and eating a small amount. You'll have a lot more enjoyable time. Okay, so let's talk specifics about making adjustments to your insulin therapy. Golf is typically performed in the first or second heart rate zone. When you perform activity in the first or second heart rate zone, the primary source of energy is fat. In fact, up to 85% of the energy metabolized to meet the activity of golf comes from fat stores. Only 10 to 15% should come from carb sources. So what you want to do is you want to set your basal insulin rate to 15% of whatever it usually is before you tee off to play golf. What that's going to do is that's going to create the proper balance and presence of insulin in your body so that you can start to metabolize fat when you start playing golf. The end result will be level glucose. The end result will be either flatlining of glucose levels or a slight rise. Try that. Yeah. Okay, so just to kind of keep expanding on the relationship between insulin and fat metabolism, because it's very important to understand. Most people with diabetes understand the relationship between insulin and glucose absorption. They don't understand the equally important relationship between insulin and fat metabolism. Insulin prevents fat metabolism. So if you're doing an exercise like golf, which requires a high degree of fat metabolism, and you have an inappropriate presence of insulin in your body, the only thing that's going to happen is a metabolic malfunction and your glucose levels are going to crash. Now, if you compare golf to, let's say for example, a wrestling match or a boxing round, which is the exact opposite. A boxing round is super high intensity, short duration, and relies almost exclusively on glycolytic forms of energy. And if you're not careful and you have too little insulin in those scenarios, your blood sugar levels will go up and sometimes severely. So really get to understand what the presence of insulin does in your body and understand that relationship of both insulin to glucose and insulin to fat metabolism. Okay, so we're here on the 9th hole at the Yale Golf Course. This is one of the most famous golf holes in the entire world. I've had some good holes, I've had some bad, but you know what? My diabetes has been really right on, and ultimately that's really what this is all about. Having fun, making sure you're having an enjoyable experience, and not having any scenario where your diabetes can be an excuse for bad golf. Unfortunately, it's just my swing. All right, let's see if I can birdie this last hole. All right, so I'm on the green at least. I got a long putt for birdie. Just to kind of recap, a couple things. Make sure you test your blood sugar a half an hour before you tee off, and then right before the first hole. Second thing, always make sure you're prepared with snacks no matter what, and always make sure you have all your diabetes medication, glucose meters with you. Third thing, always tell your playing partners that you have diabetes and you may need to test your blood sugar. Fourth thing, understand how the time of day impacts diabetes management. And the last, but definitely not the least, is understanding that golf is a low intensity, long duration exercise that requires fat metabolism, and understand the relationship between the presence of insulin impacting and inhibiting fat metabolism. If you can understand those things, you'll have a great time on the golf course, regardless of your score, and you'll have some good chances at shooting some birdies. Okay, we just finished up our 9 holes at the Yale Golf Club. I'm going to do a last test just to see where I'm at. All right. Okay, cool. So we started at 138, tested after the 4th hole. We were at 182, and now we're down to 149. That's a great golf and diabetes experience. Make sure to subscribe to our channel. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below. And especially if you want to know about other sports and how they're related to diabetes and having success with diabetes management, just let us know, and we'll be happy to answer those questions. All right, good luck.